All right. Good evening, and thank you for joining the fifth session of Cook and Serve, where we'll be making a hearty vegan vegetable lasagna with Chef Linda Tyler. I'm your host for the evening, Ashwin, and I am a member of the Climate Reality Project's Portland chapter's Climate Friendly Food Committee. So, the Climate Reality Project is a global organization whose aim is to catalyze global action for climate crisis by making sure we do all the urgent actions that we need to take in every sector possible. We or some of the attendees on this call are actually members of the Climate Reality Project's Portland chapter. And within the chapter, we have the Climate Friendly Food Committee, wherein we plan to educate people about the effect of their food choices on climate change. We also aim to be a source of evidence-based research on the impact of food choices on climate change. And of course, we have these creative events like Cook and Serve, which we organize with the help of either other organizations or small businesses in the Portland metro region. At the end of our session today, we'll also be having a volunteer opportunity for all the attendees to cook the dish that we'll be learning today for a local homeless shelter. Finally, I would like to introduce our chef for today. That would be Linda Tyler. She's the owner of Gracious Vegan, where she hosts one-on-one cooking sessions. She also does cook-along sessions and, of course, demos like the ones that we have today. She also has a class at Portland Community College where she gives coaching on plant-based lifestyle. One of the good things about all her recipes is she believes that there shouldn't be a compromise between taste and health. In fact, all her recipes do not use any sugar, they do not use any oil, they do not use any refined grains or flour, and also she doesn't use full fat coconut milk. To be honest, I don't know a lot of recipes that I can make tasty without using these ingredients because it's a real challenge. You have to take advantage of the ingredients to bring out the taste in the food. So with that, I'll hand it over to Linda Tyler.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
we can hear you.
Great. Good. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Ashwin and Linda and the committee for asking me to do the demo. I always love to share my recipes and show people that you can indeed create healthy and delicious plant-based. Those are not mutually exclusive concepts. So unfortunately today I am using some refined grains because I couldn't find whole grain lasagna noodles, but I will let you know when that is the case. So we are going to walk through making the vegetable lasagna tonight, and then we're going to talk through a second recipe, which is the corn chowder recipe, which is also on the handout. But we won't be demoing the corn chowder. We'll just be demoing the lasagna. And in fact, we won't have time to actually bake it and take it out of the oven. So you'll see it all the way to the pre-oven stage. And then all you need to do is stick it in there and bake it for, we'll talk about the amount of time till it's nice and bubbly and the breadcrumbs are golden. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to start my oven while I'm thinking of it. And let that get hot while we make the ingredients and then assemble the ingredients. So I did a little bit of a head start just so we wouldn't run out of time. So I boiled the water for the lasagna noodles and I started making my marinara sauce, which I'm making from scratch. I did give you the recipe for the marinara sauces, starts at the bottom of the first page and continues onto the second page. So I'm going to make that as well and get those going. So I'm going to switch my camera to the overhead camera so you can see. And any feedback if you want the camera angle changed. I have a little bit of leeway there, but I'm going to, this This pot is, the water is boiling. So I am going to carefully place my noodles in here. And the key about lasagna noodles is that you don't want them to stick together, and you have to actually get them in the pan. As you know, they're hard, so you have to hold them above the water for just a few seconds so that they will bend enough to fit in a curved way into the pan. So I like to keep my tongs handy so I can even do this just with the tongs and don't have to get the steam on my hand. So I'm going to use 9 noodles. And like I said, Winco did not have any whole grain lasagna noodles. I could have checked probably at Natural Grocers. I know they have brown rice lasagna noodles, brown rice flour if you're looking for gluten-free. And I know you can get whole grain or whole wheat lasagna noodles, certainly online. And maybe at Natural Grocers, maybe at New Seasons, I'm not sure, but I shop every week at Winco, and they let me down on this one. They're getting better and better with vegan products, but not perfect yet with all the healthy products. Okay, 8, and here's number 9. Bending a little bit, so now it's there. And then I have my tongs here. So every now and then I'm just gonna check that they're not sticking together. Those ridges on this side help them not to stick together. And so the package here says to cook for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna start my timer for 10 minutes there. So we'll let those go. You can see they sort of cling to one side or another until they get more elastic. Then they can kind of move around a little more. So noodles started. Then in this pot, I started the marinara sauce. So I'm going to start it up again. The approach to this has a little red wine flavor in it. So one of the fun things you can do is, instead of sauteing your aromatics, your onion and garlic in oil, you can saute in red wine. So that's what I did. I used a 1/4 cup of red wine. You can use water if you like, or broth if you like. Lots of options instead of oil. And I have a blog post on my site about how to water saute if you're interested in reading more about water saute. And if you're interested in a question I get a lot in my classes at PCC and at Mount Hood Community College is, what's wrong with oil? And so if you want to know more about oil, you can go to graciousvegan.com. That's my website. And just search for what's wrong with oil, and it'll take you to that blog post. And that has links and a general explanation. But suffice it to say here, I sauteed my onions and garlic, and they're nice and tender. So I'm ready to move to the next step, which is to add a little bit of brown sugar. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually use date paste instead of brown sugar. There's usually, for me, kind of a 2-to-1 ratio if you substitute date paste for sugar. So you can do it that way. I'm gonna go the easy route here tonight and use a tablespoon of brown sugar, which just adds a nice sweetness. And then some additional red wine to get a little more of that flavor. So we just want to get that sugar dissolved. and get it back up to boiling so that sugar gets dissolved. And then we're going to add crushed tomatoes. Any brand of crushed tomatoes is good. I would not substitute tomato sauce. It's much thinner than crushed tomatoes. If you have a large can of, say, plum tomatoes or diced tomatoes, that's fine to substitute.
How about fresh tomatoes?
You could substitute fresh tomatoes. Yep, you could. Yeah, that would work. Do you have a source of good fresh tomatoes? Yeah, that would probably be the most climate-friendly solution, right? Okay, and then I'm going to put in my crushed tomatoes. And my spices, a teaspoon of thyme, teaspoon of oregano. Of course, if you have fresh spices, you can use fresh. I use a 1-to-3 ratio. 1 teaspoon dried equals 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon of fresh. So go for it if you have that. Then some salt. A little bit of salt. And some crushed red pepper flakes. Gives it a little bit of kick. Not too much. You can add more or less depending on whether you like heat. Make sure we don't get and then some ground pepper. Okay. And then we're going to get that going. And we're going to cover it just partially so the steam can escape. So we don't have to pay too much attention to it. We'll get it to a nice simmer. And we will get the timer ready there. And you can see the lasagna noodles are starting to get more elastic. So they're staying separated. They're cooking. So we're on track with those. The sauce is starting to bubble, as you can see. It's looking good. So that is going to be on its own now. I'm going to turn it down a little more and start the timer on that. All right, so I've got my two stovetop elements. One thing about lasagna is you can, if you have time, if you have time throughout the day, I've noticed now that I work from home, instead of going into an office, I can sometimes do some meal prep at lunchtime for dinner, which is nice. I never used to be able to do that when I had to go into the office. So sometimes I get to, quitting time, 4:30 or 5, and I've done a couple of components for dinner, and then I put them together, which makes dinner less stressful, which is a nice thing. But so these, of course, you could use jarred or your favorite, store-bought marinara sauce, or you could make this ahead of time. This freezes well. You can make it way ahead of time. If you want to make a big batch, you just need 4 cups of marinara sauce of any kind. And the lasagna noodles are tougher to make ahead of time. You could make them ahead of time, drain them, rinse them in cold water, and put them in the refrigerator if you were really motivated to have everything ready. But usually it's easiest to do the pasta right beforehand. And certainly what we're going to next, the ricotta cheese, is easy to do ahead of time as well. And surprisingly, it freezes well as well. So if you were, for example, going to make 2 half batches for yourself, you could make all the ingredients except the lasagna noodles. You could make the full recipes, freeze half of those, and put those together at another time. So you have a lot of options in terms of meal prepping and making components ahead of time. So let's make this ricotta. I'm going to go back to the other camera and bring in, whoops, I keep doing stop video. Okay. And I'm going to move the camera a little bit and use my food processor. There we go. Okay. So you could do this in a blender, especially if you have a high-speed blender like a Vitamix or a Blendtec or a Ninja High Speed. That's possible. This is sort of an in-between type of, usually something that's wet. I like to do in my blender. If it's kind of dryish, I like to do it in my food processor. This is sort of right in the middle, so you can just decide for yourself which of your appliances you want to use, or you may just have one, and so it's an easy decision. Okay, my lasagna noodles are done, as you can hear. So I'm gonna take just a second, and I am going to take them to the sink and drain them and rinse them in cold water. I think my sink is just outside of view, but I could change my camera so you can watch. So, and I just put them in cold water so they wouldn't stick together and they wouldn't dry out and they would stop cooking. So they're soaking in cold water for now, which is fine. Okay, back to our ricotta. So first ingredient is raw cashews. For those of you who have cooked vegan for a while, you probably are used to using raw cashews. Raw cashews, if you soak them, they turn soft. They're a soft nut, and if you blend them with water, they basically dissolve and they create this nice cashew cream if you use just a little water, cashew milk if you use more. You might use cashew cream and then drain it in a cheesecloth, and then you get actually cheese. There are many, many ways to use raw cashews. They are sort of a miracle ingredient in the vegan cooking world. So I'm going to I soaked my cashews. Some applications of raw cashews, some recipes you don't really need to soak if you have a high-speed blender. But for this, then, since it's a thick mixture, it works better if you do pre-soak them.
So Linda, there's a question. Can you dump the noodles into a colander to drain?
Yes, you can. I have this nifty saucepan, this large Dutch oven. If you can see, it has draining holes. I don't know if you can see that. See those draining holes?
Yep.
So what I did was just pour it out through the hole of the top. But yes, I would dump it in a colander and then rinse it under cold water and then let them sit there. It's okay if they're not soaking in cold water. If you rinse them well in cold water, they'll be fine. Okay. So now we're gonna move on and put in the pound of extra firm tofu. So the nice thing about tofu and why I occasionally mix it in my recipes with tahini, like in salad dressings, I make salad dressings with silken tofu plus say tahini or sunflower seed butter, is it's nutritious in terms of protein. It's lower calorie than nuts. Nuts have a very high fat content, higher than tofu. And for this recipe, I just like the contrasting texture. The tofu is, by definition, tofu is curdled. It's a curdled food. And so it just has a nice texture that mixes with the smoother cashews. And so it mimics, the two of them together mimic ricotta cheese really well, I find. So I've put my pound of extra firm tofu in there. Then I use nutritional yeast. Again, for those of you who are experienced vegan cooks, you're very familiar with nutritional yeast, which is a deactivated yeast. It will not rise. It doesn't function as a leavening ingredient. It's deactivated, which means they killed it. But it tastes like cheese. It has a nice cheesy flavor. So that's going to give us a little bit of the cheesiness of ricotta cheese that we all like, or used to like back in the day. I haven't had cheese in 11 years, I guess. So it's been a while. Then apple cider. I like to use the Bragg's unfiltered, but you can use any apple cider you like. Then cheese. I like to tell people who say they love cheese, I say, well, it's no wonder you love cheese. It's basically fat and salt. What's not to like? The body is sort of attuned to like those things and get addicted to those things. So this is quite a lot of cheesiness. So I'm putting a teaspoon and a half of salt. Then we have a teaspoon of garlic powder. If you want to use fresh garlic, you can. I wanted kind of a mellow effect. A teaspoon of basil. And if you like this recipe and you want to use this ricotta mixture for something else and not for something that's Italian inspired like this, you could just leave out this basil. And some onion powder. Again, I wanted sort of a mellow effect, I didn't want it to scream, raw onion and garlic here, so I used the dried powders. So those are our ingredients. Now I'm going to blend here, and it doesn't have to get 100% smooth. Those of you who recall ricotta cheese when you ate it last know that it's not silky smooth. It has a little bit of texture to it. So even if yours doesn't turn out to be super smooth, that's okay. Plus it's going to be in with all these other ingredients in the lasagna. So we're not looking for perfectly smooth ricotta. So I'm going to process this for a minute or probably about a minute. gonna have to wipe down the sides here. Okay, good. I wrote a blog post on about this Cuisinart, and the title of it was, I just fixed the food processor I bought during the Reagan administration. It's, I bought it in 1985 as a grad student. And of course the motor is built like a tank, so it won't go. I had to buy a whole top assembly, which was falling apart, but Cuisinart food processor has served me well, that's for sure. So we have our very thick and luscious ricotta cheese. Of course, now the lights get in the way here. And what I like to do, just to increase the vegetable content of this dish, is to add, I'm gonna get a separate bowl. I like to combine the ricotta cheese. Oh, there's our timer for our marinara sauce. So that is done. And it can just sit in its pot. I like to mix in some spinach with the ricotta. Spinach is super healthy for you, vitamin K, and it has all sorts of great micronutrients in it. Try to eat spinach every day. So what I did here was use a 10-ounce package of frozen spinach. If you have fresh spinach, all you need to do is like quickly boil it down or steam it down so it's not fresh, and then chop it, or vice versa. Chop it, then put it maybe just in a skillet with a little bit of water just to get it cooked down. So you don't want you don't want 8 or 10 cups of fresh spinach trying to work that into this ricotta. So what I do is I thaw a frozen package of spinach, then I squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. It gets down to like the size of a tennis ball, but it's really, really, really dense. And then I fluff it back out so that I can now put it in with the ricotta cheese and stir those together.
So Linda, a question in the chat is, how long did you soak the nuts?
So my guidance is room temperature or cold water for 2 hours, or if you lose that window of time, boil some water, pour it over the nuts, then put a plate over the bowl or something and wait for 20 minutes. So hot water for 20 minutes, or room temp or cold water for 2 hours. And you can soak them longer if you like. Put them, you know, if you like start them the day before and you say, oh no, I can't make it today, I'm gonna make it tomorrow. Just put them in the refrigerator for the night, and they'll be fine. I mean, I've delayed using cashews 3 or 4 days and they're fine, as long as they're in the fridge. Okay, I'm gonna move my food processor. Also very heavy. Okay, so I believe we have all the components. The last component is, well, we'll do that later, the dried breadcrumbs. So this this size pan is about 7 by 10. You can use something slightly larger than that, 8 by 11, or something oval that's kind of around the same dimensions. This 7 or 8 by 10 inch pan fills all the way to the top. So it kind of looks nice because it's nice and thick and it fills up the pan. If you're taking this for the cook and serve, you might need to find an aluminum pan, and I should have checked out those sizes, but find something similar to that, or you could make it even in 2 pans, that's fine too. So if you're making it at home, you can use a lot of different ones. Some people, you could double this recipe or multiply it by 1.5 or 1.75 and make it in a big roasting pan, you know, a big old pan of lasagna. That's possible too, but this is a nice sort of family size, and I think it would be good for taking to the cook and serve. So we have our marinara sauce, we have our noodles, we have our ricotta, and then the final ingredient that I already, again, prepared beforehand was the vegetables and mushrooms. So what I did here was I chopped the mushrooms. You could slice them. And then I just found three more cups of chopped vegetables in my refrigerator. And then I had them in a ceramic serving dish like this. And I just put in maybe like 3 or 4 tablespoons of water, and I microwaved them first for about 4 minutes. Then I stirred them, then for maybe like 2.5 minutes, and I stirred them, and they were about done. So somewhere in that region of 6 to 8 minutes with a turn or two. You can do that in the microwave. You could water saute them on the stove as well, but they need to be cooked already. They can't be used raw in the lasagna. So we take the baking dish and we start with a cup of the sauce. We have 4 cups of sauce, so we're going to use 4 layers of sauce. The sauce is the first and the last layer. And I know this ladle is a 1/2 cup, so I'm going to do 2 of these ladles of sauce. And just, again, you don't need to oil the pan because the sauce will prevent things from sticking. And then this is where we do our layers for those of you who have made lasagna before. So then we use 3, we cooked 9 lasagna noodles. So we're going to take 3 and layer them here. I tend to not like extra noodles. So I'm going to cut off the extra length. I probably should do it outside of I should do it before I put it in. We'll do that on the subsequent ones. So, but they're very forgiving. Even if they break or they tear in half, doesn't matter because nobody can see that when it's all covered up. So I'm gonna cut off the end outside here. Now you may have a pan that needs the length, or you may have a different brand and there'll be a different length, so you may have to adjust one way or another. Okay, there's our 3 noodles for layer number 1. Then we top with 1/3 of the ricotta mixture. So I'll just do this like, there's 12 o'clock, there's 4 o'clock, there's 8 o'clock. So I have my 3 quadrants there. And then I just kind of use some small dollops here. So they'll be pretty well distributed, and I want to just sort of gently try to get them spread out so it's as close to an even layer of this spinach ricotta as possible. Here we go. Okay. And then I take, let's get these out of the photo. I take my spoon and gently with my clean fingers, gently spread these dollops out. You can see the advantage of small dollops. So everybody's piece has a layer of everything. Okay. Then after we do the ricotta, we do a layer of 1/3 of the vegetable mixture. So again, use this. Again, we want to, it doesn't seem like enough vegetables, but I think you will find the proportions actually pretty good. I always thought, oh, I could throw so many more vegetables in there, but it actually turns out to be a really nice balance. Okay, and then kind of gently push things together into their layers. And then after we do that, we repeat with the sauce. Again, do yourself a favor and distribute as nicely as possible when you first drop it, so you don't have to do too much work in terms of spreading it out. But spreading it out is good. And again, just a little pressure in order to get the air out of there. And then we go back to our noodles and lather, rinse, repeat. Now we're pros by now. We know how much of the noodle to cut off. And we were lucky none of the noodles, oh, I say that and I pull out a noodle that broke a little during cooking, but luckily it was almost exactly where I was going to cut it anyway. And yeah, if a noodle breaks, just like patch it, just put it wherever you need to. It's very forgiving. Then we're going to go back to our ricotta. And then, as I said, this ricotta, you might like it on other things. It's really good just on, I'm doing some big dollops. It's good with vegetables, with grains. You could put it in a wrap. It's good. You don't necessarily have to cook it. There's nothing that's like dangerous. There's no egg in it like ricotta mixture with meat lasagna. So it's perfectly safe to eat if you want to even use it in a sandwich or a wrap. And as I said, you can leave out the basil, you could leave out the spinach, but spinach is so good for you. And Linda, I don't know if you want to come off mute and talk about a cashew-free version of the ricotta cheese. What might you recommend if somebody has a cashew allergy?
I haven't actually tried making ricotta, but I do use, I make a salad dressing that originally called for cashews, and I have been playing around with different kinds of seeds. And right now my combination is green pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and sesame seeds. And that, for a salad dressing, that works really well. So might be worth trying for a ricotta.
Yeah. I like that idea. So none of the, no one flavor is predominant. That's a great idea. And as we mentioned, you could easily use gluten-free noodles if you need gluten-free. Okay, we're starting layer number 3, layer combo number 3. So we sauce, noodles, ricotta, sauce.
I'll just mention something else while you're doing
Sure.
the sauce there,
Yeah.
which is that I found this wonderful recipe online, which is called no-mato sauce. So because I have a tomato sensitivity, and that has been a wonderful thing for me, dishes that I always avoided. Now that I have no-mato sauce, which is basically made with beets and carrots and pumpkin puree, is a fantastic substitution for tomatoes, for tomato sauce.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's a wonderful tip. Huh. Do you remember what tomatoes taste like? Does it taste like tomatoes?
I have not eaten tomatoes for a really long time.
Yeah, I figured. Oh, I accidentally dropped. Oh no. So much. That was the biggest dollop ever. All right.
So Linda, for the noodles, I've seen a video where what one person did was they just took bread and kind of, used bread instead of noodles. What are your thoughts on that? Like take bread slices, flatten them, and then use them.
Yeah, it'll be a different texture. The bread will soften up and it will likely absorb a lot of the sauce, but it might work. I wouldn't make it for somebody else the first time I tried it. I would definitely try it first. I would not use sandwich bread because it has a very, very different texture from, good sort of French baguette type bread. So I would use Hearty, bakery type bread if I were to do it. Has anybody on the call done that before?
No.
No, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't, I think the texture would be quite different from noodles, and I myself, my husband's a real picky eater and texture is a big thing, so I try not to change expected textures. But if you are a household of adventurous eaters and you want to try it, give it a go, sure. But yeah, definitely not like, don't use like Dave's Killer bread or, one of those kind of sandwich breads. They will just dissolve. It will not be a pleasant experience.
What about tortillas?
Corn tortillas would work, definitely. I mean, there's a chile aquile and enchilada casserole that has a long tradition. So yes, corn tortillas would work. Not 100% sure about flour tortillas, and really not sure about gluten-free tortillas, flour tortillas. I would go with corn tortillas, yellow or white.
And
Okay.
what veggies? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, what veggies?
Yeah, what veggies did you use apart from mushroom?
I had zucchini and I had some baby peppers, mini peppers, so I used the orange ones for a little orange color, and broccoli. Those were my 3. But you really can use You know, you could have done carrots, asparagus. I might avoid celery because that has a stronger flavor. But you could try cabbage, I guess. Not purple cabbage because that'll color everything purple. But you could do carrots, even, you know, even snow peas or sugar snap peas, even peas, I guess, even garden peas you could do. So the final step is to get some breadcrumbs on top. And so I recommend, I just usually make my own roasted breadcrumbs from leftover bread when I have it. But they do actually sell, in some places they sell whole wheat breadcrumbs. I'm not sure about whole grain, gluten-free, but then I just mix in a little bit of garlic powder. Another option for this is to mix in some vegan Parmesan. I actually have some in my fridge, but since it's not on the recipe, I won't do that. But you could also mix in some vegan Parmesan with these breadcrumbs. So then you just lightly, gently coat. You could do more than a quarter cup if you want, but you know, with all the stuff inside, in the end, you know, it's not going to be like dairy lasagna. It's not going to be just like bloated over with cheese on the top. But I think by the time everybody eats it, they're okay with that. So this is our lasagna. I'm going to put mine in the oven. I didn't make a whole separate recipe. I will, let me see if I have it up here. Let me open this. Whoop. This is let's see, let me come back here, share my screen. This is it's kind of a narrow photo of the lasagna, but you can see the layers, and you can see the breadcrumbs got a little golden, and you can see that ricotta cheese in there. That looks like regular lasagna, right? So, and it tastes delicious. That's the best part. So I'm hoping if you make it, it tastes delicious. So I'm gonna come back to my regular camera, put this in for 50 minutes, okay. And
So
then,
have you tried making it in a microwave oven instead of a regular one?
no, I haven't. And it really does benefit from the dry heat of the oven.
Okay.
It needs to lose a little bit of its moisture, and it's such a nice effect to have the breadcrumbs golden. So I think if you were going to do it in a microwave, I would probably boil down the marinara sauce a little more so it's hot, but I think it really will be better in the regular oven.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your recipe with us. And for all those who are on the call, we have a volunteer opportunity associated with this. If you like the recipe and would like to cook this for a homeless shelter this Saturday on 24th, I am dropping in a link. You can sign up on this link and cook either the lasagna or the corn chowder, or we can even take fresh fruits and fruits for the shelter. So please do sign up if you would like to contribute. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.